Hello everyone, this is Bob Browner. I'm recording what I presented to Lincoln Public Schools leadership this morning on why we need to close the schools. And so, coronavirus, if you watch it spread, we already have the answers how contagious it is. You can see pretty much from yourself just by looking at this map that it's very contagious. It's already spread pretty much across the world, and I believe in every state in the United States at this point. So it's very contagious. The next question is how severe is it, and what can we learn from the history of what's happened before? A good slide is 100 years ago when the influenza epidemic in 1918 came through. We have two communities, Philadelphia and St. Louis, who responded very differently. Philadelphia had its first case September 17th, but waited a little over 2 weeks to close things, and unfortunately that meant tens of thousands of people in Philadelphia died. In St. Louis, from the first case to their decision to close things took 2 days, and you see a very different story. So we already unfortunately have our examples of who's Philadelphia and who's St. Louis internationally. If you look at the numbers as of this morning, this is how far things have spread, and you'll notice over here the case fatality rate is all over the map. It's over the map for a couple reasons. One, some states or countries are doing a very, very good job of testing, so it makes their number look a little lower. But on the flip side, you have some countries like Italy whose health system is overwhelmed, and so their mortality rate is probably likely quite a bit higher because there are a lot of people going without treatment because their health system was overwhelmed. Hopefully we'll be more like the South Koreans and Germans and less like the Italians. But now is about the inflection point of whether that will determine which one we're going to be. So the way to look at it is basically we know who Italy and Germany are. The big problem is right here. Where are we on this curve? To know where you're on this curve, you'd have to be doing widespread testing right now. So we would have to be testing 15,000 people a day, just like South Korea. We're not. In Nebraska, our public health lab can only run about 100 to 200 a day. We are just finally starting to get some private labs online, but I'm hearing turnaround times of 4 days, which really means it's going to be a week before you have good data. So because we don't know where we are right now, we have to assume we're here until we prove we're not over here. And so this is the testing we need to be doing. We're not doing it. This is Germany. This is South Korea. Until we're up and running like this, which my best guess is we're probably at least 2 weeks away from this, we have to assume the worst. And so which one's Lincoln going to be? Are we going to be the Philadelphia or are we going to be the St. Louis story? My hope is we'll be the St. Louis story and start getting on top of this. And frankly, every community across the state. Obviously, it's already hit in Omaha. It's a matter of time before it's Lincoln rural. You may have a little more time. But I think right now we have to start acting as if this is the case, not this. So those of us in public health, it's been very frustrating last few weeks. Many of us have been starting to sound the alarm and been told no, keep being quiet. So we don't want to stand by helplessly and watch history repeat itself. A good example is James Lawler from UNMC. He presented this a couple weeks ago to the Omaha school superintendents, and my first reaction is that he's being an alarmist. He's overreacting. Let's just take a look at things. I then got a copy of the slides that I'd heard he presented, ran the numbers myself, and realized, uh-oh, he is probably right. I think we should be we should have been making these decisions 1 to 2 weeks ago. So the other thing is this was a prediction. 1% assumes everything goes right. It does not presume the Italian case. So what would it look like if we looked at the same numbers but with Italy and Lincoln? Well, if you look at us, if we get things right, if we shut things down in time, thankfully Lincoln Public Schools is already closed. We have many things that have also been shut down, so a lot of our concerts and public events, a lot of my meetings. So we're doing the right thing already. We just need to have this happen across the board. If we do everything right, we could have a case fatality in the 0.5% range, which means 400 to 500 people dying. If we're too late and we overwhelm our health system, we could be talking about 5,000 people in Lincoln dying. The problem is that we would run out of ventilators, and that's why the fatality rate could be much higher if we overwhelm our healthcare system. The way to look at it is this, and hopefully you've seen this flattening the curve before, that if we are like here and we don't overwhelm our health system, then everybody needs a ventilator, gets a ventilator, and we can save those. But if we do this and we exceed our health system's capacity, all these people who need a ventilator are dead because we don't have enough ventilators. So we need to take things very seriously and start acting as if we're here, even though we may only be here. We may jump the gun and people are going to look back at us and say, oh, you were overreacting. But because we don't know whether we're here or not, we have to assume we're over here until we prove we're not. So what do we do right now as a community? Well, the simple rules of non-pharmaceutical interventions, NPIs for short, is an easier way to say it. Basically, if you're sick, stay home. If someone in your household is sick, stay home. We need to make sure you're not spreading it to everybody else. So please, please, please stay home if you're sick or if someone in your house is sick. Third thing is closing the schools and daycares. Fourth is social distancing. So that's why we've been closing all these community events, meetings, trying to get people not to spread things around. If you look at this modeling that was done years ago, people keep telling me, well, closing schools by itself, it doesn't work, right? Well, it works, but it works only a little bit. So what would happen if we do nothing? It's a free-for-all. If we close the schools, we could limit spread from 70% to 50%, but it doesn't get us all the way down to here. So yes, closing the schools by itself will not work, but if added to other things like closing the daycares, that's what the kids bucket is, and adults, meaning social distancing, we can go from here all the way down to here. Right now, the schools are closed and we've done some social distancing in the adult world, but we've not closed down our large daycare centers yet. So we want to, as much as possible, get from here to here. That's going to require a community response in Lincoln, but also probably across the state. If you want updated visuals, this great article in the Washington Post, you can actually run your own visuals of what this looks like. And again, if things spread and where you intervene and how you slow things down will be the difference between those curves. I ran it myself, and you can actually rerun it yourself. This is doing nothing. This is doing a partial measure, like if we only close the schools but don't do any of the other things. This is if we get part way, and this is if we do everything. And so what does that look like in a country? Well, actually, we already have the data on that. So here are different countries across the world. Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan reacted very quickly. Japan, there's a little question about how are they really sharing all their data with them, but my daughter, Robin, I talked to her in Japan last week via Skype, and I think they are doing the right thing. South Korea they were the first country hit, so they didn't know as much as the rest of us, but they did get on top of things. They've been doing mass testing, quarantine, closing things down, and you can see the stop right here. So Italy is not unfortunately been getting enough happening right now. The rest of the country seems to be responding. Spain, unfortunately, looks like it's going to be the next Italy, and US, well, we're on that curve too, unless we act quickly. So if we want to help everybody, we need to assume we're here until we prove we're over here. Yes, we may be jumping the gun, but we need to do it until we have the mass testing. So right now we are at the point where we need to find out, well, will Lincoln be another St. Louis, or will we be a Philadelphia? So again, one more time, if you're sick, stay home. If someone in your household is sick, stay home. We need to close our schools and daycares, and we need to start practicing social distancing. So here's my roles in the community. I'll leave one of the emails there if you want to contact me, and hopefully you found this helpful.